Welcome back to Sports Call here on Tiger 95.9. We are on Digital Drive. It's SEC Media Days 2026 in Tampa, Florida. Ryan Lavoie, Tom Peavy with you here today. We are now very pleased to be joined by Connor O'Gara, host of the OG Kickoff on the next round. Connor, we certainly appreciate the time. How's it been?
Gentlemen, it's great to be here. I love coming to SEC Media Days. I will not be one of those people that poo-poos this event. I love talking season in our business. It is so important. And I think it's fascinating to see all the new coaches in the SEC, six guys that are at new places. I struggle to say six new coaches because Lane Kiffin's obviously it's not really new, but seeing the different vibe for all these programs, including Auburn, I think it's been really interesting to see so far.
Well, and I believe it was last year that there were 0 new coaches.
Correct.
And so we went from 0 to 100 in a way.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Alex Golesh and the first tenure on the Plains here coming up. And obviously Auburn's been having to do this a few times here lately. What makes Alex Golesh different for you than the last couple of coaches that failed at Auburn?
Alex Golesh's background is one of one. And it's not just because he's a first generation American from Moscow. It's not just because this is someone who, he'd be the first to tell you, like, his dad was a truck driver. He worked at Little Caesars. This is someone who had very humble beginnings when he grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and was watching, an old TV that didn't get cable, and he's watching Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida, Tennessee. I'm sure he was watching the Iron Bowl when he could as well. Alex Golesh is wired perfectly for this rebuild. Perfectly. I don't know what the ceiling is, but I know that the floor with Alex Golesh looks a lot different because he took over a USF program that was 4-29 in the 3 seasons before he got there. He saw what the rebuild looked like at Tennessee in 2021, which is really important. And I know that he had Josh Heupel there with him, of course, but I think Alex Golesh is a guy that is just wired in a way that is so unique. It doesn't always stand out when you talk about other coaches because Lord knows John Summerall's a guy that has probably checked those boxes in a louder way. But Auburn needed someone who was going to come in and eat glass and sleep 4 hours a night and be this grinder. If I know one thing about Alex Golesh, it's that he is a grinder unlike very many, I think, in college football. And I'm excited to see what he can do because Lord knows Auburn being in the midst of its worst stretch since the Harry Truman administration is not something that you would like to hear me repeat on these airwaves year after year.
Well, I mean, the big thing with that rebuild that starts is all these guys that followed him from South Florida. How big is that for Auburn, but also just how much does that speak to Alex Golesh with the fact that so many guys were like, yep, I'm going to follow you wherever you go? Yeah,
it's interesting because none of those guys followed Hugh Freeze from Liberty.
Right.
But John Summerall brought over a kicker and a punter from Tulane. So there are more than one ways to skin a cat. I don't know who these people are out here skinning cats. I have no idea what those people are doing. But you can do this in the way that Alex Golesh has done it, and I hate to bring this example up, but it is the ultimate proof of concept for this model. What Indiana did with Kurt Cignetti is not a realistic expectation for anyone.
Right.
But when you bring over those players from James Madison, they established the year one foundation. There were other guys that had already been at IU that helped establish that foundation, but if you're going to go about things in a unique way, you need that buy-in from the jump. You need proof of concept. If you're trying to establish your identity, which that's the biggest word you'll hear from Alex Golesh, is identity, you need those guys with you. Having someone like Byrum Brown that's got more experience in his specific offense than any returning quarterback in the SEC, you're going to have someone who comes in and gets it. And these guys aren't necessarily going to have to be sold on Alex Golesh. And you've got a returning defensive coordinator, DJ Durkin. Like, you're returning pieces on defense. You wouldn't think necessarily have to be sold on Durkin. So, like, that's good because buy-in matters. And it doesn't guarantee anything. But if you have that year one success where maybe you rise above expectations, you win one or two of those games that you're not supposed to, then all of a sudden people are like, all right, that's when I'm going to start giving more money. That's when I'm going to start funding this roster. I'll pay for this transfer or something like that. So, like, it is important. As much as this is very much a rebuild and a transition year, having those guys from USF and bringing over a dozen of these guys, I do think is going to yield some positive results, and it's going to expedite this rebuild in ways that it wouldn't have if he had just said, nope, I'm going to start over from scratch.
When you mentioned, the eating glass, the sleeping 4 hours from Alex Golesh a moment ago, it made me think of another activity that's 4 hours, and it's called golf. And that's what we were talking about with the former head coach this time last year.
I asked him about that last year. He did not like that question. That was tough. It's way better to be talking about football and tempo. Like Alex Golesh does not play golf, confirmed. He told us all that. Does not care about time of possession. I think he's finished in the 6 years that – I think I have this right. In the 6 years that he's been the offensive coordinator of an offense, or maybe it's the 5 years, whatever it's been, where he's at least been offensive coordinator or play caller, his teams have finished outside of the bottom 2 of the country in time of possession once. I mean, get ready. The time of possession, complementary football, it's going to be a topic of conversation. It's the type of thing that if you're not winning football games, people are going to say, oh, hey, you need to give the defense a break. They're struggling to do things, but it's kind of what you signed up for. And if you have an offensive identity that can do all these different things with Byrum Brown as your quarterback, then you feel like you have proof of concept, and you'll get more of those defensive guys buying in. Let's remember, Tennessee had some good defenses under Josh Heupel with teams that did not care about time of possession whatsoever, a couple of which Alex Golesh was a part of. So I think we've seen that before, and it's a results-based business. But I'm excited to see Auburn have a fast offense that is actually worth watching, and not one that makes me want to go to the dentist or do literally anything else in my life.
Hey, bringing up the defense, and that's what I was going to ask your opinion. Can this defense keep up with the offense? Because this is a defense that has been used to what it has been. They're the ones that have been on the field constantly. Now it might be a little different thing with them, and they're going to be able to keep up with that pace.
I think statistically they'll take a step back.
Right.
I do, because I think it's going to be really tough with some of the pieces that they lost in the portal and with some of the things that they're going to be asked to do. And I do think it was probably always going to be a transition year with the things that they did well last year. But people probably forgot that this unit was actually capable of keeping its head above water.
Yeah.
It really was. And I do think that there are a couple of those games that kind of stand out where, the Vandy game kind of got away from them. And there were moments where you're like, man, against Bama, they just needed to be able to get this stop, and they couldn't do it. So, it's not to say it was this all-world unit that was just set it and forget it, and it was entirely on the offense. But I think that they will probably take a step back. I think that it's going to be interesting to see kind of what that dynamic looks like with Golesh and Durkin. Two guys that really feel like they have autonomy on their respective sides of the ball. Durkin wanted this head coaching job. He wanted it. He did. He was coaching for it down the stretch. And is he going to be a guy that's, taking shots at Golesh in the media or something like that, or back and forth? I do think that dynamic is going to be one worth following. But, yeah, they should be a better than average defense, just maybe not quite as good as they were last year.
One of the things that has escaped Auburn as a unit for more than just the 5 losing seasons, quite frankly, you could go back to at least 2017, has been offensive line play.
Yeah.
And they've obviously, with year number 1, they're having to bring in a bunch of portal guys. I'm curious, not just with Auburn's situation, but just as you look league-wide or college football-wide, going and doing things through the portal, how difficult is it to build a portal-laden offensive line?
Go ask Bama. It's tough, man. It's tough. I was really surprised that Bama didn't go after more experienced guys in the portal, on the offensive line specifically. And they have one returning starter on offense, Ryan Coleman-Williams, a guy that probably has been mentioned once or twice in the state of Alabama before. And I do think that building through the portal on the offensive line is really difficult. The name of the game now is just, if you can get continuity, that's great. You're not going to have 2 and 3 deeps that you trust, that you feel like you're awesome. So much of it with offensive line play is just about health. If we're in the 9th or 10th game and we're like, this is the 7th different offensive line that Auburn's had to roll out this year, 7 different combination, it's probably not good. It's probably really, really bad. So above all else, it's cliche to say, in the portal era, it's just about staying healthy. It's plugging in this guy. Ideally, you're plugging in 2 guys from the portal as offensive line starters, and everybody can just stay healthy and stay at their position. and you don't have a leaky left side with a left tackle where all of a sudden you need to rotate the veteran over there or something like that. So that to me is going to determine kind of what Auburn's able to do in the trenches, because they need to get better in that area. Like they just do. It's been a minute since we felt like they've been really dominant at the line of scrimmage, and that's probably got something to do with the frustrating 2020s that they've had.
Looking at the schedule a little bit, I don't want to look too far past Baylor because, I mean, that is a game, but you know,
hey, DJ Lagway, man, don't sleep on DJ Lagway.
I know, and that could be sneaky, but you look at the Florida game, and you know, with Auburn, I've heard 6 wins. The consensus seems like 7. Some say 8. I think maybe 8. Some really crazy things, 9 and 10. Like,
yeah, let's not go there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. But that Florida game seems like that's the one that is going to really kind of dictate. If Auburn takes care of business in the first 2, it feels like that's one that could kind of really set the tone for what Auburn may or may not be able to do the rest of the way, and you could even say the same thing for Florida.
So what's interesting is I have Auburn going 6-6 but beating Florida.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not like necessarily disagreeing with you, because I do think it is important, and it's important for that dynamic of John Summerall and Alex Golesh. And I'm not here talking about like fake quotes or something like that of what was reportedly said or something like that, but I do think that's going to be something that is a bit of a litmus test. What Auburn looks like defending Jordan-Hare is real big for proof of concept, because those 2 predecessors didn't get that.
No, they haven't been doing it.
And if you can't turn that place into the house of horrors, what are we doing here? This is pointless. So, I mean, I do think that game is really, really important. Florida's number 1 in the country in percentage of returning defensive production. That's going to be, I think, a good battle with that Auburn offense of what it looks like for a Florida defense that really retained a lot more pieces than I thought they were going to. And with Brad White running that defense, that's a good matchup early season. And kind of, you know, if you look at the way that it's played out with Alex Golesh and John Summerall so far, it's kind of like, hey, you know, this is kind of a big moment for Alex Golesh. But yeah, I don't know that it necessarily like sets them on a specific path. I think there are a lot of opportunities on that schedule where they could really do that. And the nature of the SEC is you're just not a finished product in September anymore. Like, I would like to think that we're going to know kind of who this Auburn team is early rather than later because of the transition Byrum Brown is making. That's going to be very important. But I think that's going to be a great game. And it's one of those fun early season tests with 2 coaches that are just out to prove, hey, I belong in this conference.
Talking to Connor O'Gara today on Sports Call. A couple more for you, Connor. Let's look league-wide for a moment. And, you know, obviously the SEC touting the 5 playoff bids last year, the continual search to make the 9-game schedule a part of why they should continually get more and more. But I'm curious, on the top of the league, how many teams do you feel confident in as being playoff quality, and do all those teams reach their full potential this year?
No, they don't. I think there's 4 playoff teams from the SEC. The challenge with the 9-game conference schedule is that I don't think it's like, oh my God, the SEC is ruining its chances of winning a national championship as a result of this 9-game conference schedule. I do, however, think that in this era, there's just less of a gap. I think there's less of a gap with those teams like 1 through 8. I mean, last year we see Texas lose that game at Florida. Texas is preseason number 1. We all know what happens with that Florida season. So, yeah, I think that the SEC flexing about its depth and saying, hey, we want to be rewarded for the 9-game conference schedule, I get why they're doing this. The problem is that when it's on the heels of 3 consecutive years of missing out on a national championship, that's an issue. And I've made this comparison before. It's like what the Big Ten would do in the 2010s. You know, I remember getting to Big Ten Media Days in 2018. And it was the 3rd consecutive year in which the Big Ten champion had not made the 4-team playoff. And the Big Ten gets up there and they talk about how great their 9-game conference schedule is, and they take shots at the SEC. And I'm like, this sucks. You shouldn't be doing this. You sound like losers. Right. And now it's role reversal for this. We care about championships, guys. We care about whether or not you're the last team standing. And until you can actually show that you're over whatever this little drought is for the SEC, we're going to look at them in a different way. We just are. They don't have the same cachet to be able to say that, hey, our 9-game conference schedule is absolutely this gauntlet. But, you know, I think the likes of Texas, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Alabama, who I know, I realize where I'm saying this. I think Alabama's got a schedule that sets up very well to be able to get to 10-2. The bookends are very favorable. Middle part's difficult, but I think 4 teams in the college football playoff, 1 team getting to a national championship, that team being Georgia, but falling short to an Oregon team that gives the Big Ten its 4th different national champion in as many years, matching what the SEC did from 2007 to 2010.
And lastly, Connor, we are always fascinated by what happened with Ole Miss and LSU. And obviously it is one thing to build an SEC program into making it playoff, but then go to a place that has won multiple national championships with multiple coaches in a certain period of time. And so I wonder about the short-term stock of Ole Miss and LSU versus the long-term stock, because you sound pretty confident Ole Miss right now, and you should be. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss, Kewan Lacey, they're still loaded offensively. So short-term, is it advantage Ole Miss, but then long-term advantage LSU? Is that how you see it?
Yeah, that's probably how I would spin it. And I think Ole Miss wins that game on September 19th. Not sure if you guys have heard those 2 teams are playing football. Oxford Police, get ready for it. That's probably how I would lean. And I still need to see things from Pete Golding as a head coach that make me think he can't do this. Because right now, everything that he's done makes me think this guy knows what he's doing. Beat Kirby Smart on extra rest. Go ask Steve Sarkisian how difficult it is to beat Kirby Smart. Well, any amount of rest. So I do think that Ole Miss is set up better this year. Right. And they're set up because they are able to get those guys back. Like I was just in there, and you hear Kewan Lacey talking about Lane Kiffin, and he's asked about his relationship with him, and he's like, he was my head coach last year. They're very much...
It's not a glowing endorsement.
No, it's not. Charlie West Jr., how's your relationship with him? He was my offensive coordinator last year. They're telling it like it is, man. Yeah. And you know what? So much of college football is winning the breakup. I think Ole Miss has the ability to win the breakup this year, albeit with a really difficult schedule, and I'm probably going to regret picking them to get to their first ever SEC championship, and I should have probably just had Georgia in there, and I'm going to feel like an idiot in December. But I think Ole Miss has that upside this year, man. Like I just think those pieces are really, really good, and I think that if you're talking long-term, that's different. Lane Kiffin at LSU, much like Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, his time will be defined by whether or not he wins a national championship. I wouldn't say that same thing about Pete Golding, who I think has the better roster year 1. 3-4 years from now, that's a little bit tougher to get behind.
He is Connor O'Gara joining us today, the host of the OG Kickoff on the Next Round. Connor, we certainly appreciate the time catching up with you, and we'll look forward to trying to catch up with you again down the line.
Gentlemen, appreciate it.
That is Connor O'Gara here. This is SEC Media Days 2026. Sports Call will return after this.